Did you know that some of the poorest people in the United States, perhaps contrary to popular belief or media bantering, they're actually white people? Did you know that? Some of the poorest pockets, communities, large communities, entire counties in the United States are actually counties that are 99% white populations. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. Yeah, that's a true study. In the Appalachian Mountains, there are places where the economic level of daily earnings and the structure and the level of education, et cetera, is so much lower than even the suburbs or the urban pockets or the projects of the Bronx or Detroit or Chicago. How can that possibly be true if equality is a racism issue, if income inequality is a male-female issue? I've quoted some conversation that I've been studying recently. I'm fascinated with the number of, especially young people, who are bright and articulate, but severely underinformed. I don't mean that they're not educated. They have been educated. Many of them have college degrees or they're currently in college, and they have these ideas about what the world should look like, about equality between the sexes and equality between the races and equality between the economic differences that are created by whatever label they can come up with, whether it's their sexual identity or their sexual practices or their chosen gender identity. See, all of these labels become excuses for not simply taking care of what you're responsible for. I know that sounds really harsh, but hear me out. There's a great juxtaposition between a Thomas Sowell, for an example, and a Dr. Jordan Peterson. And whether you agree with Jordan Peterson's politics or not, he makes a great observation when he says, let me just ask you a question before we talk about running an entire cruise ship or an entire economic structure or a political structure, say the size of a nation. Before we decide whether Marxism versus socialism versus capitalism is the right thing, is democracy or is it democratic socialism, before we decide if that's the right thing, let me ask you this really simple question. Is your room clean? Is your room clean and neatly organized? If you needed something from your room right now, would you know exactly where to find it? Whether that's a receipt from yesterday's lunch or a specific pair of socks to match a specific outfit. And the reality is, most of these young people, and I would say most Americans today, would have to answer that question, well, no. You know, my house could be better organized, my entire world, my life could be better organized, my room could be better organized. I have a hard time just putting together stuff to go to the CPA for my taxes every year. And yet these are the same people, articulate and intelligent and educated, who want to run the world with the new economic system that has been tried several times for the last several decades, and the result was 100 million dead people, and not the change in economic structure that they envisioned. Thomas Sowell, I think, said it well. Socialism is a great idea. It's not a great reality because it hasn't worked yet. Now, I'll let you do your own research on that. I want you to come out with your own ideas. My job is not to tell you what to think. I don't believe good leaders do that. I believe good leaders challenge you to think, not tell you what to think. And here on Leading Leaders Podcast, my mission is to challenge you to think, to do your homework, to figure it out on your own. Thomas Sowell is a good source. Do some reading, find some of his books. His first book of major consequence was published in 1987, reprinted in 2007. So many of the young people in college today would have never heard of it unless they were turned on to it intentionally. It's not something they would have studied in school. It's powerful stuff, and it's well worth the look. He declared himself a Marxist at 19 years old, but that was in the late 40s and 50s. Then he went off to the Korean War, and then he got his doctorate degree, and his mind began to change a little bit. See, there's some challenges in the way we understand things. And one of the things that Dr. Sowell points out, and I thought very validly, was when we look at the economic rise of the African Americans just in the United States, for the first 100 years after slavery was abolished, the rise of economic standards was 47%. But in the years following, when welfare became a national policy, when the government stepped in, when institutions began to do the work of equalizing the playing field, that growth rate went from 47% to 19%. Seems like the natural course of things had a better result than the government and economic policies put in place by institutions. It's just something to think about. But as a leader, you should be willing and committed to doing your homework, to being informed, to knowing what it is that you're talking about before you get into it. My whole conversation today is not about one particular economic policy over another or one particular political framework over another. My entire point today is, if you have already made your decision, have you truly done your homework? Have you made the decision because it's popular? Are you thinking the way you were told to think? Or have you done your homework and you're thinking for yourself? That's my point, and that's my challenge for you today. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Leadership team. If attitude is going to have a deep impact on your business and bottom line, make it a positive attitude with a positive impact. Visit jlorennorris.com/attitude hack